to Lesson 7 in 12 Rules for Living by Jordan Peterson. Last week, we began to look at good and evil. The first portion of our study proved that man is evil because he has self-conscious ability to inflict pain, and he uses it to torture and scare and terrify others, and because man makes things worse on earth by conscious choice. However, we also saw that man is created good. He is created in the image of God, and he has a nostalgia for innocence. In other words, man remembers his innocence, sort of, and desires it again. We also saw last week that Adam and Eve, before they fell, were almost asleep. They were not fully conscious. They did not have a full free will and the ability to choose to do good or evil. So in that sense, they were not perfect. In that sense, the waking up of mankind, which brought about evil doing, also brought about the possibility of consciously chosen goodness. The suggestion was made that maybe the reason we feel guilty is not because we are essentially evil, but because we have, for whatever reason, failed to choose to walk with God and to follow his command to complete his creative act and call forth order by true words of our mouth. From there, we realized that in ages past, people were much worse than they are now. They were more violent, more selfish, more like beasts than we are now. Now we have a different problem. Now we have a cynical self-hatred. It is fashionable to believe that people are arrogant, egotistical, and always looking out for themselves. But this is not really true of most people today. In fact, most people today have the opposite problem. They shoulder the intolerable burden of self-disgust, self-contempt, shame, and self-consciousness. Most people believe that other people should not have to suffer. Most people are willing to give and work in order to alleviate the sufferings of others, but still they will not take care of themselves. That brings us to the last paragraph that we looked at last week. And I would like to read it again and just continue in this section. It is true that the idea of virtuous self-sacrifice is deeply embedded in Christian culture, Western culture. This is because we follow the example of Jesus Christ. We are influenced by Christianity. And Jesus sacrificed himself for us. He is our example. But Jordan Peterson would like to make a strong statement slightly to the contrary. He says, any claim that the golden rule does not mean sacrifice yourself for others might therefore appear dubious. He is saying that the golden rule, which is you should do to other people what you would like them to do to you. He is saying that maybe that does not mean I should sacrifice myself in every case for the interests of others. He goes on to say, Christ's archetypical death exists as an example of how to accept finitude. That means accept our limits. We are not perfect people. Accept finitude, betrayal, and tyranny. Heroically. So he was saying Christ's sacrifice can teach us to accept the problems of life heroically. Also, Christ's death can teach us how to walk with God despite the tragedy of self-conscious knowledge. So how can we get out of our evil? How can we regain our oneness with God, which we had in innocence in the Garden of Eden, even though we're not innocent anymore? The death of Jesus Christ gives the answer to that. And it is not a directive to victimize ourselves in the service of others. So you hurting yourself is not good. To sacrifice ourselves to God, to give ourselves to God, does not mean to suffer silently and willingly when some person or organization abuses us. So demands more from us consistently than is offered in return. That means we are supporting tyranny and allowing ourselves to be treated like slaves when we submit to this sort of thing. It is not virtuous to be victimized by a bully, whether it is someone else or yourself. Let us continue, go straight on. Okay, so Jordan Peterson is the I here. I learned 2 very important lessons from Carl Jung, who was a famous psychologist. He learned 2 lessons about the golden rule, doing unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's the golden rule. So what are the 2 lessons? The first was that Neither of these statements, what statements? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and love your neighbor as yourself. Those are the two statements. Neither of them has anything to do with being nice. Okay, so the golden rule is not about being nice. And the second lesson he learned from Carl Jung was that both of those sentences are equations rather than injunctions. So let's look at those sentences one more time. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So there's an equation there, an equality. You do to them what you want them to do to you. The other, love your neighbor as yourself. Again, we have an equation. It does not say love your neighbor more than you love yourself. It says love your neighbor as much as you love yourself. And if you don't love yourself, you will not love your neighbor well either. If you wish bad to be done to you because you think you are not worth anything, then the golden rule will have you doing the same to others. These are the lessons Jordan Peterson learned from Carl Jung. Jung points out, this means embracing and loving the sinner who is you, as much as forgiving and aiding someone else who is stumbling and imperfect. You are as much deserving of love and help as the next guy. If you are willing to help someone else, it is important that you be just as willing to help yourself. Another point. God claims, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. It does not say you can do to yourself what you deserve, punish yourself, nor that you can punish anyone else. God is the one who keeps justice and mercy. So, you do not belong to yourself. You are the property of God. That means you do not have a right to torture and mistreat yourself. Also, your being, that means who you are, is inexorably tied up with the being of others. So if you are hurt, others will be hurt. You are part of a network. Your family, your friends, your community will all be hurt if you are hurt. Also, we are all in God's image. We have a spark of the divine in us. That means we are valuable. You may not see the spark of divine in you, but those who love you see it. This is true of each of us. We are, as it were, low-res versions of God. So you are an image of him. Not complete, low res. But you can make order from chaos. You have that ability. You can take the chaos around you and turn it into order. That is part of being human. Or, of course, you can take order and turn it into chaos. Every evil mob knows that. So, we may not exactly be God, but we are not nothing either. Human beings are worth something. Jordan goes on. He says, "In my own periods of darkness, I find myself frequently amazed by the ability of other people to befriend each other, to love their intimate partners, their parents, and their children. To do what they must to keep the machinery of the world running. He talks about a man he knew who was injured by a car accident. And for years after the crash, this injured man worked side by side with another injured man who had a degenerative neurological disease. They cooperated in their work, each one making up for the other's inadequacy. This he calls a sort of everyday heroism. And there are many examples of everyday heroes. It is part of the human spirit. Jordan says he believes this sort of heroism is the rule, not the exception. He believes that most people do heroic things regularly. He goes on to prove that. He says, most people have one or more serious health problems, but yet they keep working without complaining. If a person doesn't have health problems themselves, probably they have a family member in crisis. Yet they keep producing. They keep doing their job. They keep holding themselves and their families together and society. And Jordan says, to me, this is miraculous. So much so that a dumbfounded gratitude is the only appropriate response. Dumbfounded means, I can't believe it. So a gratitude, thank you, thank you, thank you, compounded with wonder, is the only appropriate response to the ordinary, everyday heroism of people that are doing their job and holding chaos at bay in spite of the normal problems that everybody has to face. There are so many ways that things can fall apart, and it is always wounded people who are holding it together, because we're all wounded. They deserve heartfelt admiration for that. It's an ongoing miracle of fortitude and perseverance. Fortitude is strength. Perseverance is sticking with it, enduring. In his clinical practice, Jordan encourages people to give themselves some credit and give credit to those around them who act productively and with care toward others. People are so tortured by the limitations and constraints of being that I am amazed they ever act properly or look beyond themselves at all. The fact that most people do look beyond themselves and keep working in spite of trouble, he lists. He says, because of these people, we have heat in our houses, water, electricity, power, food, and even the opportunity for us today to be thinking about the broader implications of philosophy. Everything that protects us from freezing and starving and dying from lack of water tends to fall apart through entropy and must be fixed by somebody. Only the constant attention of careful people keeps the machinery of society working. Some people degenerate into the hell of resentment, but most people don't. Most refuse to, despite their sufferings and disappointments, losses, inadequacies, and ugliness. So, in spite of the problems we face, most of us keep a good attitude and do not become bitter. And this, again, is a miracle for those with eyes to see it. That means if you have enough insight to perceive it, it's there, it's true. He moves on in a similar vein. Hold on. Humanity deserves some sympathy for the appalling burden under which the human individual staggers. And then he goes on to talk about the burdens we all face. We are vulnerable. We are under the tyranny of the state. We are under the depredations of nature, storms, drought, famine, heat, cold. This sympathy and respect that people should receive is a proper medicine for self-conscious self-contempt. When we think we are terrible, we should realize we are carrying a heavy burden. All of us are. The self-contempt we feel is only half of the story. Hatred for self must be balanced with gratefulness for what? For tradition. This is order, not chaos. For the state, we should be grateful that we have a state that provides infrastructure for the electricity and the roads and the commerce and the utilities, etc. So traditions that keep things orderly. The state that keeps things orderly. So we should balance hatred for the evil in ourselves with admiration for the good that everyday people accomplish, to say nothing of the staggering achievements of the truly remarkable. So we don't even need to consider, to say nothing means that, the outstanding achievements. Just the ordinary achievements is enough to deserve honor. We all deserve some respect. You deserve respect. You are important to other people and to yourself. You have a vital role to play in the destiny of the world, says Jordan Peterson. And you have a moral obligation to take care of yourself. Because if you go down, your job won't be done. Every person is flawed, not perfect. Everyone falls short of the glory of God. That is true. But if that meant that we had no responsibility to care for ourselves, then everybody would be brutally punished all the time. And that would not be good. The fact that we are not perfect is not a justification for continual punishment, because continual punishment would not be good for anyone. It is not in the best interests of heaven for all of us to be brutally punished all the time. It would make everything worse in every way. That simply cannot be the proper response to human evil, to original sin. Instead, we must treat ourselves as we would treat someone we loved and were responsible for. We must consider what would be truly good for ourselves. We don't need to consider what we want or what would make us happy. What is truly good for me is not necessarily what I want or what would make me happy. I must consider, what do I need? Happy is not the same as good. For example, children always want candy. But if you give them candy all the time, it will rot their teeth and make them fat and unhealthy. We must think, what is good for this child? Some vegetables, some meat, occasionally some candy, but not much, and lots of good exercise. Is this what the child wants? Maybe not right now, but it is what is good for the child. We need to think about ourselves in the same way as we would think of a child that we were responsible for. We must help a child become a virtuous, responsible, awake being, capable of full reciprocity. That means giving as well as taking. Able to take care of himself and others, and to thrive while doing so. Thrive means live well and become more and more healthy and happy. So, if we must treat children and those in our care this way, why not us? What we need to do is consider, what would my life look like if I were caring for myself properly? What career would challenge me and render me productive and helpful, so that I could shoulder my share of the load and enjoy the consequences? What should I be doing when I have some freedom to improve my health, expand my knowledge, and strengthen my body? when I think of these things, I think, oh my gosh, I should be going to the gym. I should be eating differently. I should be going and attending certain social meetings instead of staying home and watching TV. I think it would be like having a personal trainer or like having a parent. He also says, you need to know where you are and who you are. You need to know where you are so that you can chart your course. For example, if I am overweight and weak, then I should not start a heavy exercise routine. I need to start small and move in this direction. And then you need to know who you are so that you can understand your armament and bolster yourself in respect to your limitations. Okay, so you need to know who you are so that you will choose rightly which course of self-improvement you would choose. You need to know where you are going so that you can limit the extent of chaos in your life, restructure order, and bring the divine force of hope to bear on the world. These lines made me think, where am I going? Am I going to get married again? Am I going to be a Christian missionary? These were both possibilities. Or am I going to stay close to my daughter and help to homeschool her children? I think that's the choice. If that is where I am going, then I have to limit the chaos of my world by providing enough finances so that I will not be too busy to do my mission. I need to restructure order in my life and bring the divine force of hope to bear on the world. In the margin on my page, I wrote the words divorce, hope, grandchildren. You must determine where you are going. Hold on. So that you can bargain for yourself and so that you won't end up resentful, vengeful, and cruel. Bargain for yourself. What does that mean? You have to articulate your own principles so that you can defend yourself against others taking inappropriate advantage of you. So maybe in my case, I have to articulate what my role is in helping with my grandchildren, so that I don't find myself becoming the mother to these children while my daughter and son-in-law go out every night to parties. Because if that happened, I might become resentful, vengeful, and cruel because I am being taken advantage of. I need to think through what my role is, articulate it, and then bargain with my daughter. I will do this if you will do that. I need to bargain for myself. You must discipline yourself carefully. Do not just react, blunder into the day. You must think, what are my priorities? You must keep the promises you make to yourself and reward yourself so that you can trust and motivate yourself. So, for example, maybe I'm trying to lose weight. So I say to myself, if you lose 2 pounds this week, you can have the whole day on Sunday to relax in bed and read a book and watch TV or something. Then, if it turns out that I did lose 2 pounds, I must keep that promise and let myself have the reward. If not, I won't believe myself when I say, if you lose 2 pounds next week, you can go to Disney World. I have to keep the promises I make to myself so that I will trust myself in the future and be able to motivate myself to baby steps in the right direction. You need to determine how to act toward yourself so that you are most likely to become and stay a good person. This takes thought. It would be good to make the world a better place. Heaven, after all, will not arrive on its own accord. That means it will not arrive by itself without someone bringing it. There must be an agent to bring heaven to earth, and that agent is us. We will have to work to bring heaven to the earth. We will have to strengthen ourselves so that we can withstand the deadly angels and flaming sword of judgment that God used to bar its entrance. This is an image of the Garden of Eden, and God set an angel with a flaming sword to bar the way so that Adam and Eve could not come back in to the garden and eat of the tree of life. So it says here, we have to strengthen ourselves so that we can get past the obstacles to heaven on earth, to living a heavenly quality of life. Don't underestimate the power of vision and direction. Vision is what he was talking about when he said, we have to chart our course. We have to know who we are so that we will choose the right path of self-improvement. That's vision. And direction, same thing. It's showing us the way to go. Don't underestimate that. Don't think, oh, I don't need those things. I will just follow my nose. That's a little phrase that means I will not plan. I will just go where my instinct tells me. Do not do that. You need vision and direction. You need to plan for your improvement. The power of vision and direction are irresistible forces able to transform what might appear to be unconquerable obstacles into traversable pathways and expanding opportunities. If you have vision and direction, you can get over your obstacles. If you don't, you will sit back and say, I can't change. I'm too old. Or I'm too fat. Or I'm addicted to whatever, alcohol or whatever. What appears to be an insuperable obstacle to a person sitting back without vision is not an obstacle at all to someone with vision. They get right over it. Strengthen the individual. Start with yourself. Do you know that if each person strengthens themselves and one more, each one helps one, you will ultimately have exponential growth and improvement. If one person helps 1,000, that's good. But if each person helps one, then you have billions. Each of us can help one. In the Bible, it talks about the kingdom of heaven. There are parables of the kingdom of heaven. And one of them is, the kingdom of heaven is like a loaf of dough, bread dough, with a little bit of leaven, a little bit of yeast put in. And pretty soon, all of the dough is leavened. This is how heaven comes. Each of us does a little bit, and the whole world is made light. Take care with yourself. That means treat yourself with care. Make your plans and do them. Be intentional in your own self-improvement. Define who you are. This is again our speech. We must speak truth and call order out of chaos. We must speak truth about who we are and call order out of chaos. Refine your personality. Make it better. Choose your destination and articulate your being. Choose your destination is vision and direction. Articulate your being is speaking. Speak it into being. As the great 19th century German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche so brilliantly noted, he whose life has a why can bear almost any how. You can help direct the world more toward heaven and away from hell. A little bit, just a little bit. Is the area around you more like heaven because of you, or more like hell because of you? If it is more like heaven, you're doing well. You have an individual hell that you know about. Don't go there. Leave it behind. Aim to go in the other direction. You can devote your life to this, and that will give you meaning. It doesn't take much to have meaning in your life. Make the world more like heaven around you than it is like hell. That will atone for your sinful nature and replace your shame with natural pride and confidence, the confidence of someone who has learned once again to walk with God, the way Adam did before the fall. And the first step is to treat yourself as if you were someone you were responsible for helping. Give it some thought. Make some plans. So that's the end of rule number 2. Next week, we'll start with rule number 3. Thank you.